Well, good to see you. It's great to be back in Southwest Florida. I'm joined with Surgeon General of Florida, Dr. Joe Ladapo. Our Hardee County Sheriff, Vent Crawford. Karen Bailey, who's a mother. And Ozzie Morabel, co-owner of Taco Works restaurants in Southwest Florida. So we're here today to discuss one of the proposed constitutional amendments that are going to be on your ballot on November, if you vote before then, Amendment 3. And I've had a lot of people come up to me, and really the whole time I've been governor, even running for governor, voters would say, okay, how do you make sense of these amendments? Because, let's face it, when these special interest amendments get on, they're trying to write it in a way that's going to trick as many people as possible to vote for it. That's by design. They spend millions of dollars to poll test this. And so a lot of folks were like, can you talk? I heard you mention it. And so we're going to do, so I'm going to address kind of what the amendment means, how it got here, and then we'll have our panelists discuss some other aspects of this. So first of all, how did proposed Amendment 3 get on your ballot? It didn't just happen out of thin air. It wasn't immaculately conceived. It was put on the ballot because one big weed company has now spent $100 million trying to pass it. This amendment was written by the CEO of that big weed company. And so just think about it. This is a weed company that is publicly traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange. As a CEO and as a publicly traded company, you have a fiduciary duty to maximize the value for your shareholders. So when this amendment is being written, this amendment is being written to benefit this one big weed company. It is not meant to benefit you. It's not meant to benefit the state. If they did anything other than try to benefit themselves, it'd be a violation of their business responsibilities. They are not spending $100 million because they want to benefit you or to benefit the state of Florida. So that's how it got here. So let's just be clear about that. And here's, I think, a good example of what that means. Sometimes people say, oh, well, the free state of Florida, first of all, we do have legal weed, by the way. You get a medical card. A lot of people get it. I implemented that when I became governor. Not everyone that has a medical card has a terminal condition. I know that. I mean, the reality is there's a lot of people that do it. So that's there. But it doesn't overwhelm our public spaces, and it hasn't caused big problems with quality of life. So we do have that. But some people say, hey, free state of Florida, why not? Well, here's the thing. They wrote this amendment. And what they say is you have a right to possess and smoke up to 100 joints of weed at a time, which is more than California and Colorado by far, but only if you buy it from them. You are not allowed to grow your own weed in your backyard and use it. You can only buy and utilize weed if you purchase it from the big weed cartel that they create in this constitutional amendment. And that's what they do. They take the incumbent companies, they get these special privileges to be able to produce and sell and all that marijuana, but you don't get to, if you wanted to grow it your own, you would not be able to. And they'll say, oh, I see these commercials, no one should be put in prison for smoking marijuana. Well, I agree with that. And so I asked the Department of Corrections, our secretary, how many people are currently in prison in Florida for either possessing or smoking, this amount of marijuana? You know the answer to that? 0. Not a single person in the state of Florida. So that's a total red herring on that. But you can bet your bottom dollar if this passes, if they spend $100 million plus, I think it's up to $110 million now, do you not think they're going to lobby the legislature to crack down and increase penalties on homegrown? That will happen. That's in their business interest. They need to force the transactions into this big weed cartel. So that's what they're doing on this. And so it's not a freedom amendment. And I would say it's doubly not freedom because you have a freedom, should have the freedom as a Floridian to live your life without being impacted by marijuana if it's something you don't like. You should be able to go to restaurants and go into town and go into parks and not have this dominating everywhere, like it does in California, like it does in Colorado, like it does in New York City. I've had people that have moved to Florida from New York City because they're like, look, I'm more liberal on this, and I supported it, but they can't even walk their kids down the sidewalk in Manhattan without smelling it everywhere. And so we have to respect the freedom of people to be able to live their lives without being impacted by this. This amendment does not provide any ability to limit the use of this in our public spaces, our parks, our beaches, all that stuff. There is nothing, and one thing I think is that's really troubling about this, you get this ballot summary on your ballot. You do not get the actual text of the amendment. I would encourage you to read this. In fact, I would challenge you, you should never vote for an amendment you haven't read. It will not be on your ballot. You've got to go find this. So I would read it. You will not be able to find any ability to prevent Florida from becoming Colorado or California. In fact, it's just the opposite. This is more liberal with respect to public use. Colorado actually has prohibitions on it. Here, they're saying that you can smoke it and you're not subject to any criminal, civil liability or sanctions, any sanctions. So think about it, because I've had some business owners say to me, yeah, I don't want it in my restaurant, but I'll just make them leave. You can't sanction them for using it. This is blanket. There is no exception. The words that they're using matter. This would be part of our Constitution forever. We would never change this if it ends up passing. So it is not supportive of freedom if you want to grow your own, and then it infringes on the freedom of people that don't want to be impacted by marijuana use and just want to be able to do. And I think a lot of Floridians, like, look, I mean, Joe's going to talk about, like we want to discourage this use. It is not positive, okay? I know some people are saying, like, it doesn't matter, people. That's not true. There's a lot of people that think differently. I get that. But I think a lot of Floridians are like, you know what? Whatever people are doing in their home, like, I don't really care. I just don't want it to overrun our public spaces. Bet your bottom dollar, if this amendment passes, it will forever change the culture of Florida. It will forever change all these spaces and all these places that we've liked. And, you know, our state is a jewel in this country. Is there any, I mean, Colorado, California, they went down this road. Colorado was the first. You never hear people say, you know what, I was against it, but I was wrong. It's good that it happened. You hear the opposite all the time. People say, you know what, I was for it, and it hasn't worked out. I wish we had not done that. So this is not about the freedom. It's also something that, okay, one corporation has done $100 million plus. They're obviously writing it to force you to buy it from them. Are they going to do anything else to give them? Are there any other goodies they're going to try to put in our Constitution to benefit them? Yes, there are. So here's what they do. And again, you would not know this from the ballot summary. This is, the Supreme Court of Florida should have never approved this ballot summary. It doesn't tell you what's in the amendment. It was a huge, huge mistake. They didn't do their job. And so now we're having to really work, just educate people. Here's the thing. You guys can decide how you can vote on it. If everyone fully understood it, we'll live with the verdict. But I think what happens is a lot of people don't know, and you will not know this on the ballot. So here's what it does. So they have given themselves a total cloak of protection from any accountability. So the companies that are favored in this, where you got to buy the weed from, they are acting in accordance, you know, with this Constitution as it relates to acquiring, cultivating, processing, manufacturing, selling, and distributing marijuana products to adults shall not be subject to criminal or civil liability or sanctions under Florida law. There's no exceptions to that. So what does that mean? Total immunity from civil liability for any of their business operations. If they produce defective weed and you have a seizure, are you going to be able to sue them? Not according to this. This says no liability. It didn't say, well, they're still liable for negligence and product liability. No. Distributing. If they've got weed in one of their trucks and they're bringing it to a dispensary and they run over some kid, is the family going to be able to sue for them? Not according to this. This is blanket immunity language. This is something that's never been done in a state constitution in our history. I don't think any history to do this, and no sanctions under Florida law. So, it's like we may, because what's happened in California and Colorado, they're not allowed to sell to minors, but they package it in things that look like Sour Patch Kids or all these other things, and it ends up being sold to minors, maybe through the back door. I don't know how it does, but it's been bad. We wouldn't be able to regulate the packaging because we couldn't hold them accountable. You can't sanction them at all under Florida law. So this is a grotesque attempt to shield this one company and this one industry from any accountability or any type of liability. There's not another business. I mean, at the taco place, if he were serving, bogus food and people started to break out in hives and seizures, he would have to be responsible for that. And, if you're building a house for somebody and the thing collapses because you were negligent, you would be responsible. And so somehow marijuana, these companies, you got to buy it from them, and then there's nothing you can do to them if they don't behave appropriately. That is totally unacceptable when it comes to this. And then they make the argument, well, there's going to be money for education and law enforcement. Help our teachers, Read this. There is nothing in this amendment that dedicates any funding for education, law enforcement, nothing. That is totally fabricated. It is not in here if you actually read the text of the amendment. Now, when Colorado did it, the argument was, look, people smoke marijuana. And that's true in Florida, even apart from our medical. I get people do it, right? I mean, like that obviously is the case. Now, they're not allowed to do it in public, and I think that's a good thing that that's not allowed. But people do it in their homes. They do it at parties, whatever. And the argument is, well, since people are going to do it, if you legalize it and tax it, man, you're gonna eliminate the black market. It's going to hurt the drug cartels, and you're going to have all this tax revenue. What has happened in Colorado? Did it eliminate the black market? To the contrary, the black market is bigger than ever. Why? Two reasons. One, when you do policies like Colorado, it does increase use. You will have a lot more people that are smoking marijuana if Amendment 3 passes. I don't think that's good for Florida. I think it's good for people's health, but more people will do it. But if you did try to tax it, it raises the price. So you have a bigger market of consumers, and you have an easier opportunity for the black market to undercut with lower prices. That's why Colorado's black market is bigger. And is Colorado now reaping any type of financial windfall from marijuana? Zero. They did probably raise some initially, but that peters off very quickly. And even if the legislature decided to tax it, knowing what happened, they would obviously, that would be a tough decision because you're doing you would be building a black market. But what about the decline in tax revenue for a decline in tourism, for a decline in other type of economic opportunities? I mean, this is a dynamic situation. Don't tell me people are going to want to come to Florida if all the beaches reek of marijuana. That is going to hurt this state. That will not be good. We would probably become a destination state for marijuana, which would compound the problem, and I think it would make us much less family friendly, and I think we would drive away tourists. So this is a dynamic thing, but there will be a bigger black market. That's true in California. That's true in New York. That's true in Colorado. Everyone that's done this has happened. There's not one example where the black market has dried up. And then finally, and I'll turn it over to Joe, and we'll start the panel. I'm a dad. I've got a second grader, a first grader, and a preschooler. And, it's hard enough to be a parent now. If you look at what has happened in the states that have done it, and remember, this is the most egregious possible way you can do this. It's the most reckless way you can do it because it's only about one company making a lot of money off the backs of Floridians. It's not about good public policy. So all the problems you see in California, I think, would be compounded in Florida because we can't change this. Once it's in the Constitution, if there's problems, you can't go in and tweak it. For example, I'm going to bring the legislature in after the election to tweak the condo thing. They did these condo things after Surfside. I mean, I knew there were, it's a reality. It needs to be tweaked. It will be. We're going to keep people in their condos. If that had been in the Constitution, there's nothing you can do. You can't do it. So you have that. But just as a parent, this has impacted youth in Colorado, California. There was an ad that was on by folks that are opposing this. It was an ER doctor from California. She talks about what she has seen since California has done this, and it's horrifying. It's something that we should not want to happen in the state. And these companies, they want to make the most powerful type of weed that they can. They can make more money that way, and the consequences really are not their concern. It's interesting. The company that has done $100 million, when we did the medical, they said, oh, we want a license for medical. We don't believe in recreational. This is something that can heal people. And look, there are people that use it that say it's been good for them for their conditions, fine. But that was what they said, and then they turn around now and are funding to try to do something like this. So it will have a negative impact on not just the quality of life, but on the youth in the state of Florida. I can tell you, if you look at all the things kids can get involved in, and I know there's a lot of other perils out there, social media, alcohol, don't get me wrong, but drug use is the #1 way they will get pushed off course. It just is, especially in the teens, and you will see more of that here. It will create a lot of problems, and I know Joe will be able to talk some about that. So go into this eyes wide open. This is not about freedom. It's about corporate profit and corporate greed. It's an amendment written by the CEO of one company that's put $100 million in to benefit them. That's why they're doing it. It's not about creating good public policy for Florida. You're not going to be free to grow your own. You will be held accountable. They will ensure that if you try to buy it from anybody else but them. They want a guaranteed profit stream off the backs of Floridians. They don't want to have any liability, and they put that in our Constitution, potentially, for doing it. So if you're against marijuana use, generally, this is an easy no, right? But even if you're somebody that's more open to it, this is the last way you would want to go about doing it. And you can't unring this bell, and you're not going to be able to fix all the problems that'll end up developing, as a result of this. If the legislature had a bill to say, well, we have our medical, if you do want to grow it in your backyard, use it at home, fine, but you can't bring it in, all these companies would oppose that. Let's just be clear. This is not about freedom for them. So go into it eyes wide open, and your default on Constitution should be no. They have the burden to show you why this would be a good thing for the state of Florida. It should not be. If you have any doubt in your mind, you should vote no, because you're not going to be able to unring the bell. And so I am just confident that when this got on the ballot, and I knew it was percolating, but honestly, there was a lot of other stuff going on, to actually parse this, I was horrified that they would try to do this in our Constitution. I knew this is not something people would like. And so what I would say is actually read the text, and if you agree with that this is bad, make sure you talk to your friends, families, and neighbors about it. I just want to have an educated electorate on this. This summary does not educate the voter. This does not do the trick. This doesn't even come close to doing the trick. So let's go into this eyes wide open, and I'm confident if we do, it'll all work out well for the people of Florida. Okay. We're fortunate to have the top Surgeon General of all 50 states, who he took on, the COVID hysterics, CDC, everybody that was peddling junk science when it was not popular to do that, and has continued to be a leader across a whole range of issues. And so I'm happy to turn it over to Joseph Ladapo.
Hello, everyone. So, it's great to be down here in this part of the state. This is a beautiful part of the state. We live in South Pasadena in the St. Pete area, so it's got, not too far up north, and it's just a nice coast to be on. People like the Atlantic coast. We like this coast more. So, this is such an interesting thing that's happening, and I always have to think about, well, what am I going to talk about? And of course, I'm going to talk about some of the health stuff that a lot of people don't know about, just because it's not something that's been publicized very much, if at all, by media, because media doesn't want you to know about it, because the media likes to pick winners and losers, and talking about the real harms of marijuana use isn't on the winner list for them historically. But before I talk about the health stuff, I want to actually talk about, like, literally what's happening right now, what we just witnessed, which has been, it's been something I've been watching for some days. So it's such an interesting sort of decision that folks are going to have to make in a few weeks. And it's really interesting because the idea of not criminalizing, not penalizing people for using, a drug privately in their homes, I mean, that appeals to just about everyone. That's very popular, right? If people want to do something, you may not agree with it, but if it's not hurting someone else and they're doing it privately, I mean, who wants to get in the way of that? That's a very popular idea. And that idea has been imposed or stamped on this notion of legalization of marijuana. And, it's very appealing. The problem is that is a mirage. And it's a mirage because of what the governor just shared. And it's so hard to get people to move away from their mirages, but it's important because it matters. So, so why is it a mirage? So the idea is wonderful, but what do we actually have? What are people actually talking about? What's the matter of the issue? The factual matter of the issue is that people are talking about a policy that literally, it's not about, people just, decriminalizing something that, most people don't feel is really criminal activity. The matter of it is a company getting to just corner the market, or a group of companies just getting to corner the market, and writing that into law, that they get to control this notion that people have. So the reality is something that is very different. And it's what the governor was just sharing. And the other piece that the governor has mentioned, that's like, that just, again, it's not what people think about when they think about decriminalization, is this, is codifying immunity, like legal immunity, complete protection. I mean, that is profound. That is written in some of the language that people were looking at. It's a profound idea that you will get to corner the market, right? Because people think, oh, people can grow it, I'll be able to grow it, and whatever, we'll have parties, all that stuff. But that's not what it is. Like, that's the mirage. That's the notion that's in people's minds. But it is not the factual matter of it. The factual matter of it is that it is the biggest type of handout for a company. And then, as if that's not enough, and they want to kick you in the where, they also write in that you even, we're completely immune. You can't protect us. I mean, that's the most sinister type of sort of legislation, if you will, that I could even imagine. And that is the factual content that we're talking about. I mean, it disturbs me. I think I know that for most people, if they actually knew, if they could separate the idea of legalization and decriminalization, which pretty much just about everyone's on the same page about, from the reality, I mean, people would feel very differently. There's no question. This is, I mean, people can debate, but in my mind, this is the most disgusting thing that is on the list of items that people have to make a decision about in a few weeks. And there's another piece that's happening right now that deserves attention, which is how, when you're in these situations where, like, again, naturally people are feeling one way, and you're hearing information that's saying, I know you feel this way, But no, look over here. This is actually, these are the facts, and I think you would feel differently if you accepted that. That dynamic is difficult for people. That's what the governor is trying to do. He's like, I get how people feel, but here's the substance, here are the facts. And it's hard, because you're over here, but he's saying this, and how could that possibly be true? And, you look at Governor DeSantis's history. You look at the energy and the enthusiasm that he is, and the conviction really that he's demonstrating as he's talking about this. Well, why is he doing that? And what does it remind you of? Well, why is he doing it? For the same reason he's always done it, when he's saying something that is in contrast to popular opinion. We saw it a few years ago during the COVID pandemic at the very beginning, where everyone was in one direction and your governor was saying something else and taking tremendous amounts of nonstop heat for it. I mean, he's not doing it for his own good. He doesn't want that, that's not fun. He's not doing it for his own good. He's doing it because he cares about you. And he cares about and he cares about Florida. Like that's where it's coming from. That's everything. And and that's what's happening right now too. And back then, it was hard to understand how he could be right, and the few other voices out there could be right when everyone else was saying something else. And the same thing is happening right now. He's doing it because he cares about you, and he cares about this state. And it's absolutely, in my mind, in my judgment, the right thing to do. In terms of some of the health stuff that's worth noting, these are facts. So multiple studies show that marijuana increases the incidence of schizophrenia in young people. Like multiple studies, different countries, they show it. People don't know this, but it's true. And people don't know it because, unfortunately, we have a media that wants you drugged out. They want you drugged out because, hey, guess what? You're easier to control. You're way more controllable when you're drugged out. But that is a fact. Other facts, the marijuana that is out, people use now, isn't the same marijuana that people were using decades ago. The amount of THC, that psychoactive part, is much, much, much higher now. And along with that, the addiction is way more, it's a real thing. I mean, people, I think, still sometimes have trouble with the idea that marijuana is an addictive substance. But believe me, I've seen it in the hospital. I've seen so many cases of things like cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, where people come in, they're miserable, they're vomiting, they got abdominal pain. It's completely related to marijuana use. The addiction is absolutely a real thing. Other things that are important, it increases depression, it increases anxiety, it kills brain cells. Like there's just no question about that. So on the health side, it's not a good thing. I mean, it's just not a good thing for people. And you can say that without judgment. I know I want to make sure people know that I'm not judging anyone. This conversation isn't about judgment. In fact, that's part of the reason that people generally feel that it's okay to do stuff privately in your home. It is about what the facts are in terms of the health issues, and there are major health issues. And God bless the freedom to do what you want, but you should be informed, and you shouldn't just believe people who say people aren't getting addicted, or lives aren't getting ruined, or brain cells aren't dying, or people aren't losing motivation to pursue the things that are important to them in their lives. So please, as the governor said, please share the information with people. I mean, read it, share the words that, where maybe companies are saying that they are completely protected and you can only buy, whatever, you can only buy it from them. Like that, those are facts. I mean, the right way to do it is to work with the lawmakers and to find a way to do it that, works for Floridians. But this is a way that was designed, crafted, and planned for implementation to the benefit of a single entity.
Thank you. Good job. Okay, Sheriff.
Thank you, Governor, for, the invite. Thank you for your passion to the free state of Florida, and thank you for the passion on voting no for Amendment 3. Law enforcement, how's it going to affect law enforcement if this constitutional amendment passes? There's just it's a snowball effect on what's going to happen. Surgeon General was talking about the health. What a lot of people is failing to think about is, as far as law enforcement, what are we going to be dealing with in 5 years? If we think that the youth is not going to get a hold of this recreational marijuana under 21 years of age, we're living in a fantasy world. They are going to do it. The Surgeon General knows that the fact that frontal lobe in our children is going to grow till 25 years of age. It's going to be legal in the state of Florida to kill our children's brain after 21 years of age for 4 years. We're allowing it to happen, so what is law enforcement going to have to deal with in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Are we going to need more law enforcement to go ahead and help stabilize the mental health problems that the free state of Florida, as we live it now, is going to have? Our problems are going to continue with our youth. As you will hear later on a panelist, the gateway to other drugs. It's apparent that if you have a little bit of weed, the next time that you smoke it, you got to get a little bit more. It's the same way with fentanyl, same way with all narcotics. To get that high, you're going to have a little bit more. As far as, and both the governor and the Surgeon General went ahead and made contact about the illegal use is going to go down since it's all good. Well, economic supply and demand will go ahead and knock that down. So really our cartels is going to get in on this. And again, the gateway to other drugs as far as what's coming across the border at this time. And what we're fighting is opioid problems, and most especially fentanyl. But let's go into driving high. I was a trooper for 29 years before I became sheriff of Hardy County. One of the worst things that I had to do is go tell people, the parents of youth that was just trying it, that their son or daughter is not going to come home. It's a lot deeper, and people don't realize how deep it is when it comes to law enforcement and the responsibilities of our law enforcement officers across the state. That again, the governor has supported with great funding and great backing. Lastly, I would go ahead and just say, when we talk about Colorado and California and some statistics that has come out of that, 1 in 4 of the fatalities in California, there was marijuana found in the system. The year after they legalized marijuana, 32% fatality increase on the roadways. I don't know the population of Colorado, but it's probably a tad bit lower than the state of Florida. Anybody here needs to understand that you need to go out and you need to educate people, like the governor was saying. You got to go ahead and read the whole thing. The amendment is not good. It's not good. If you're going for it, well, the taxes, and you hear this fabrication and just bull that we hear, the big money vote yes stuff on TV and these commercials. It's not stating the facts. It's $110 million investment for $6 billion with a B return. That's what these people are looking for. If they think you got the free state of Florida in their minds in Canada, it's not. It's a business. drugs are always going to be a business today, tomorrow, 10 years ago. So just let us know that, or let you know that Sheriff Hardy County vote no on 3. Thank you.
Thank you. And you know, one of the things on the driving, a huge increase in traffic fatalities in Colorado with this because of this. But the problem is, because obviously, unfortunately, you know, we have driving under the influence of alcohol. The difference is if you're driving drunk and you get pulled over, do breathalyzer, field sobriety, and you could be held accountable to where you don't hurt somebody and you're held. The problem with the marijuana, they can't test for it on the spot. And so the notion that they're able to hold these people accountable for driving like that until they actually hurt somebody, it's really hard. So I think it would be worse than what we have to do with the alcohol because it's easier to detect and hold people accountable for the alcohol. And so you will see, and the Florida Department of Transportation has been running public service announcements, just informing people the truth. Like, you will see an increase in traffic fatalities, and you will see an increase in car insurance premiums, and that the premiums have gone up anyways in the last few years with the inflation. They would go up even more. That will happen. I mean, no question. One final thing in terms of law enforcement, and I'm not saying this is the most important, but a guy like me that loves these guys, it matters. So one of my friends who's helping us on this is Sheriff of Polk County, Grady Judd, and Grady made the point at an event with my wife that, you know, all their police canines are going to have to be decommissioned because they're not, you can't train them to know what is True Leaf's pot and what is pot you're growing in your backyard. It's just not going to work. So you're going to have a big decommissioning of the canines. They're going to cost a lot of money to try to, you know, train new ones. But I mean, you know what? It's like, you know, this one of the maybe intended consequence, but it's one of the consequences. Not that that's the most important, but you will see a decommission of the police canines. Okay, Karen Bailey.
Thanks. I want to thank you all for taking this on. Woo! I am from Ocala, Florida, and I lost my 2 and only children to opioid addiction. Corey and Alyssa were 2 years apart. Corey was a strong football player, very popular. Alyssa was a straight A IB student that had aspirations of going to medical school. And so I'll start with Corey. When you change the brain, you change the heart. And I'm not kidding when I say that when you notice your child is into this and is having problems, you can honestly look at them and say, I don't know who you are anymore. What, you know, it's just, it's a long, difficult road for families. It's horrible. But I wanted to be open, and I wanted Corey to talk to me, and I wanted to be able for him to talk to me about it. So we had put him into counseling, and I was driving him to one of his counseling sessions, and I said, so how did this start for you? Tell me, how did this start? And he said, oh, Mama, he said, that was so easy. He said, after a football game or wakeboarding out at the lake, he said, we always, me and my friends, and he was popular, there were a lot of friends, and we lost a lot of kids, we have. He said, it always starts with marijuana, but the pot always runs out. And he said, after that pot runs out, somebody's always got something else. And he said, when you're having fun with your friends, you don't want it to end. So that's how maybe a teenager thinks. So Corey died September the 21st of 2011. And the day that he died, he and Alyssa had shared pills together the same way they probably would have shared a joint together. Corey died, Alyssa survived. And 42 months after that, Alyssa took her life. So I want you to think about brothers and sisters, brothers and brothers who go out to parties and hang out with their friends, even if their parents are home. I still don't trust that you know, that's, you don't know what they're doing when they're not with you. And I just want you to vote no on this amendment so bad, because it would change Florida, and our children are worth better than that. And Frankly, I feel that any type of leadership that would lift marijuana up after going through what I have gone through, that isn't a leadership that we would want at all. We got to put our children first. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ozzy.
Thank you, Governor. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for the invitation. When I got the call yesterday to be here to talk about this subject, I was a little weirded out a little bit because I sell tacos for a living, you know. So I'm like, come on, man, this could help. But at the same time, I'm a very, very open-minded person when it comes to this subject. I'm somewhat educated in it. I watch a lot of news, TV, a lot of commercials, and of course, everything you see on TV is they're trying to paint it as this great thing that's going to happen. Oh, it's going to be so cool. It's going to be, you can do this, you can do that. They paint it in a way that it kind of worries me a little bit. I'm 51 years old right now, so I'm kind of at that line that I'm no longer young. So I think about the youth and what it could lead to. I have a lot of employees that are young, and I find myself being a mentor to a lot of this I call them kids. I call them my kids. So I worry about things like that. I care about things like this. I'm in the business of selling food and alcohol. So obviously we have to follow a lot of rules, a lot of regulations. We're forced to do it. We don't mind it. It's what we choose to do. So when I took some time just in the last couple of days knowing that I was coming here and I read the proposition, and guys, I'm telling you, take time and read it. Just like anything else you're going to vote on, and I'm not a politician, but read it. Because when you see something on the media and the news, social media, they paint everything to be a way that is not really the way it really is, with a lot of things. When I read it, pretty much what he's holding right there, the governor, it's so simple to understand that somebody like me or anybody can understand it. And when I say simple, it's not really a good thing. Because for lack of a better word, it's so stupid the way it's written. It's so clear how they're trying to protect themselves. And me being in the restaurant business, trying to grow a brand or doing different things, I can only imagine if a big corporation was to come here to Florida or anywhere, any state, and try to change the rules that I already have to follow, but only to work in their favor, whether they're competition or not. I look at it more like, we have to, every day, I'm going to go back to my business today and I'm going to have to follow some regulation. I'm going to have a health inspection. I'm going to have whatever. They regulate and look at everything we do. And I'm okay with that. But when I read this and they're protecting themselves in a way, it's almost making it so obvious saying, hey, I got all this money. I want to pass this. And if anything bad happens, I'm okay. Nothing's going to happen to me. But then if anything good happens, we're going to make a lot of money. And if you're for weed or whatever, they're hurting a lot of other businesses that are for weed as well. I'm an open-minded person myself. I know this is a trend that can't be stopped, but if it's coming so fast, I believe it has to be regulated just like restaurants and bars are, or maybe even more strict because it's new. And like the government said, I'm assuming that once it passes, it's really hard to change it back, especially with so many people out there that are for it and everything. So that is my point of view as a business owner. Read it. All I would suggest read it because it took me no more than 20 minutes, probably even way less than that, to read it again, understand it, and it was easy for me to make a decision on which way I want to go with it, which I'm sure you guys know where I'm at with it. And just read about it, and let's hope that in the future, if they do pass it, or something happens years from now, it's written in a different way where it benefits other people, it doesn't hurt as many people as possible. I don't speak about health because that's not what I do. I don't speak about all the things that the experiences they've been through, but I speak for myself as a business owner. I would hate to see somebody take over regulations regarding the business that I'm in, changing them in their favor.
Thank you. So if you do, you got to go online. It won't be on your ballot. You got to go online to get it. And when you read it, basically whatever's underlined is the additions to Florida's Constitution. And so, like the public use, that's a huge deal. We don't want it everywhere in Florida. Even people that love marijuana, most of them do not want it either like that. And if you read this, there is the old provisions from the medical marijuana actually says medical marijuana can limited, but not recreational. How does that make any sense whatsoever? It also has for medical, when they enacted medical in 2016, there was explicit provisions saying you can still have negligence and malpractice actions. They made sure to preserve that because they knew to do blanket liability would be crazy. This is blanket liability. It's right there underlined. No exceptions, no qualifications. So when you're doing it this summary, just so you know, this is not written by an honest broker. This is written by the company. They wrote the summary and they wrote the amendment. So they spent over $100 million. I would be willing to bet you millions of dollars were spent on how do you craft this summary in a way that's going to dupe as many people as possible to think this is a good thing. And so the summary does not give you what you need. You really got to read the whole thing. And so, clearly, if you don't like marijuana at all, it's easy no. If you're somebody that doesn't really care people do in their own home, but like don't want it everywhere in Florida, that's an easy no. But then if you're somebody, even if you're gung-ho on marijuana, why would you want to empower and reward a big weed cartel to where you could be held accountable for growing it yourself? You got to buy it from them, and then if they sell you crap, you can't sue them, and they're immune. Nobody thinks that's a good idea. And so from that perspective, it's bad. And then I would say there's a lot of people that may not have strong feelings either way. If you're a constitutionalist, there's certain things that don't belong in a constitution. Certain things should just be done through the legislature or not, but you don't jam in this type of policy into the fundamental governing document of a state or the United States. And so I would just ask everyone to make sure you read, you're familiar. I think most people that I've spoken to, when they read it and they understand the implications, most of them have a pretty negative reaction to it. It spans the gamut of what you think about marijuana, but most people have a pretty negative reaction. Because it's like, okay, we're a proud state. We've led the nation in migration coming to Florida. We've got the lowest per capita debt in the country, low taxes. We're ranked #1 in education. All this stuff, right? It's great, and people are proud. It's like, why would you want to set a precedent where one company can come spend $110 million and ensconce itself in our state's constitution? Is that good government? Even if you like the policy somehow, that's not the way I think we want this. And one of my fears is on Amendment 3, and oh, by the way, on Amendment 4, which is being put forward by very far left groups that are part of the abortion industry, very radical what they're trying to do. Again, not obvious because they don't define any terms. They don't tell you they're taking away parental consent. They don't tell you that non-physicians are going to be able to greenlight abortions up till birth. They don't tell you they're going to sue to try to get taxpayer-funded abortions if it passes. So a lot of issues there. But if they pass, what will happen is people are going to see, okay, they can't win elections, they can't do this, they can't do that. But if you put the money out and you craft the language, then you too can have a spot in Florida's Constitution. I think that's not a precedent you want to set going forward. So I think the fact that this is such an obvious power grab and it's motivated by obviously corporate greed, once people know that, I do think that people are like, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. So even apart from the substance, even apart from marijuana, this is not the way you govern in a republic. This is not the appropriate way to amend the Constitution. So if you agree with this, with how we've articulated this, and if you believe that this is something that should not be enacted, talk to your family members, your friends, your neighbors, educate. If people are fully educated and they still think this is a good idea, by golly, they have every right to go in whole hog on that, and that's fine. That's your franchise is your franchise. What I don't want to see is just, the Constitution be amended and then a year later people are like, well, I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't know. This is the warning about what will happen. This is the warning about how this got on your ballot. So just take that and do with it as you see fit. Always great to be in Southwest Florida. God bless everyone, and we'll be back soon. Thank you.